More than 4,000 people have had their holiday dreams shattered by a convicted fraudster called Graham Maynard. Tonight, we track him down.
Explain yourself, Mr. Maynard. You want to come round me? You're going to get it. Going to get what? What do you want? Your money or not?
Whatever Graham Maynard did, it was always well packaged.
This is Graham Maynard. 15 years ago, he had a dream to be the leading British developer on the Costa del Sol. This is that dream.
But in the harsh light of day, that dream has turned into a nightmare for Anne Stamp and David Best. Both bought Spanish villas. Both now want their money back, if they can pin Graham Maynard down. And they're not the only ones. At Walton Hall in Warwickshire, 3,000 people are after the same man's blood. Angry that their luxury timeshare development has had to call in the receiver with debts of £6 million. Maynard himself has now been made personally bankrupt for £3.5 million.
How kind, thank you.
And has just walked away from the mess.
Mr. Maynard's attitude to Walton Hall, I think, was one that it was a cash cow. It generated substantial funds fairly quickly. It's quite possible that there are substantial sums of money, maybe even millions, that have not been accounted for.
The suspicion is that this cat has had the cream to pay for his flamboyant lifestyle and his tasteless Christmas cards. Tonight, we're one step ahead of the fraud squad as we follow Maynard to Spain, where he runs his other businesses. Here, he's built 5 holiday and retirement villages under the name El Capistrano. Maynard lives at the top of the heap, inaccessible, in the penthouse.
Mr. Maynard, can we have a word with you, please? David Best from Preston in Lancashire. Could we have a word with you, please? I'm one of your customers.
Maynard hides behind security cameras and, on occasion, bodyguards. In the heart of El Capistrano, near Nerja, east of Malaga, there's an example of Maynard at his greedy worst. He gave this villa to Lang SA, the builders, to help pay off a large debt. They sold it, and Maynard, who now did not own the property, sold it twice. To a Swedish gentleman, and for £43,000 to an English builder called Jim Chappell.
Graham Maynard is a man who has no scruples at all, will do anything to get your money out of you, and will never keep to his word. There's hundreds of people, not tens, hundreds of people in the 5 villages have been cheated.
Graham Maynard spent millions to make more millions. In particular, he spent a fortune on sales commissions and on misleading advertising. This promotional video was voiced by Judith Chalmers and shown to potential customers.
When you wake up in the morning here, it always seems to be yet another sunny day. And as you breakfast on your balcony, you can also have the very pleasant feeling that your investment in El Capistrano is increasing while you're enjoying it.
Anne and Ken Stamp, Sunderland publicans, were amongst those convinced by the video.
The video was of Judith Chalmers. Now, Judith Chalmers is well known for the holiday programme, so we thought, hey, this has got to be good. It's on the level.
Pete Murray also did promotional videos. In this one, potential profits were used to lure the villa buyers.
And when you're not using it, you could earn up to £3,000 per annum in rental income.
To Anne Stamp, this was an irresistible offer, easing the £25,000 burden of buying a holiday home for their handicapped daughter.
I think I'd like to be a sheep. Oh,
In
yes,
the
I'd like
event,
to be a
the
sheep.
dream for little Emma went horribly wrong.
And then all the sheep went, we don't want you in here.
For a start, the villa was being rented out, but the Stamps weren't being paid.
Come on.
But according to this man, that was par for the course at Maynard's management company, La Posada. Alex Marshman quit in disgust.
We always had a lot of people coming into us and complaining about the fact that they weren't receiving that rental income and that bills weren't being paid. There was an instance when the electricity came in and took out quite a number of meters out of these privately owned villas. Where still there was a couple who arrived one day to find out that La Posada had rented out their villa to somebody else, and they weren't even, in fact, on the rental system. So obviously they didn't care whose property they were using or abusing.
Anne Stamp, whose trust was certainly abused, now wants to see Maynard face to face. Fed up with being cheated, she decided to sell. But there was another problem. Maynard had never given her the deeds to number 78A Pueblo, so she had to ask him to sell on her behalf. He did sell, but he didn't tell her or pay her.
He said that he had no recollection of me, no documentation of anything I had, and I said that I had my receipts, and still he denied any knowledge of it. And in fact, he said all the documentation dealing with 78A Pueblo or with me had been burned.
But that's a lie. El Capistrano's own records show that Anne Stamp owned the villa and that Maynard sold it. So Anne Stamp now has no legal right to get into the house she owned, and she hasn't had her money back either.
And Emma is the one who's going to be hurt the most, because she's starting to wonder and ask why we don't get her on the plane and come back to this lovely villa. And it's hard to try to explain to someone like Emma, we haven't got the villa anymore, and it's all thanks to Graham Maynard. So he's got to get his comeuppance somewhere along the line.
Even one of Maynard's ex-employees was taken for a ride. When Derek Santon's girlfriend May Liz was taken ill with throat cancer, he asked Maynard to sell their villa to raise money for medical bills. Maynard sold it, but only gave them half the money. Now they're reduced to begging for what is rightfully theirs.
After that, I had to go around begging into Capistrano 2 or 3 times a week, and I just got pieces, sometimes as little as £25. In fact, one particular occasion, when I told him I had no money at all, he pulled out a big wad of notes and offered to lend me £100, which, seeing he owed me 30,000 at the time, was a bit of cheap.
But I think Graham Maynard's done to us, to me, I think it's horrible, it's terrible. And he knew that this money for the villa was very, very important to us, was very important to me.
As the money runs out, May Liz is moving house again. She and Derek have moved 3 times in 4 months, each time to cheaper accommodation.
More medical problems, needs more money, and I'm not able to do any work to earn money either. And the way I have to live now, and I see Graham Maynard in that crowd of walking around like the big man. I feel I could spit. I'm not able to, but I feel I could.
Nerha celebrates its annual carnival. Maynard still boasts he's king of Nerha. As he boasted, he could buy every influential official for 30 miles around. Like the carnival supporters, he enjoys dressing up, as Dustin Hoffman in Tootsie. or as James Bond. He even bought and carries the same kind of gun. But perhaps he's better cast as Al Capone. One thing Maynard doesn't boast about is his 2-year prison sentence for fraud, for obtaining property and money by deception. The charges involved the use of no less than 58 bank accounts, mostly in company names from Manchester to Essex. And at the time, Maynard asked for a further 115 offences to be taken into account. Yet within 3 years of walking free from this prison, Maynard had gone to Spain and become El Presidente of El Capistrano. The sales model for the Capistrano Beach Club, Maynard's most recent fantasy, is just that. The sweeping sandy beach, the quiet seaside road, the luxurious swimming pool. But 4 years on, there are unfinished houses, angry buyers, and more evidence of fraud. This is the house for which former Preston Police Sergeant David Best paid nearly £22,000.
Well, here we are. This is the villa that we bought. It was supposed to have been ready in December 1988. We're now April 1991. We've paid £21,500 so far. The building, as I said, is by no means complete. The infrastructure, which was one of the reasons which made our mind up for us in the first place, well, where is it? There are no swimming pools, no tennis courts, no cafeterias, no restaurants, none of these things. When we put this to Maynard and asked for our money back, amazingly the man said, we were in breach of contract. Would you believe that? We're in breach of contract.
Some desperate buyers are now putting together a Maynard-approved rescue package, but Mr. Best wants no part of it.
We spent nearly £3,000 fending off Maynard's creditors, who seem to think that we're responsible for Maynard's bills. I find this very hard to take. It's quite dishonest, really.
Dishonest is one word, illegal another. Fraudulent is just as appropriate. El Presidente, it seems, would stop at nothing. Maynard's pursuit of money went to enormous lengths. He was even able to persuade some purchasers to part with stage payments for villas that weren't built. Stage payments were part of the original contract. Reminder letters were sent out, but the clincher was an architect's certificate which certified that the building had reached a certain stage. This certificate, for example, certifies that a building has its roof on, but it wasn't even started, let alone finished. When the purchasers arrived to check, not a brick had been laid. Maynard could also go to jail again for that, obtaining money by deception. And here at the Capistrano Beach Club, he was up to another nasty trick.
We were instructed to push the security angle of buying timeshare at El Capistrano. We were told to tell the clients that all of the funds that they paid across to us would go into a trust, which was held by Barclays Trust in Gibraltar, and that money would in fact stay there until the property was finished and ready for occupancy. I left shortly after I found out that this wasn't happening.
And according to Barclays Bank, no such protective trust exists.
So who controlled the bank account the money was being paid to?
Obviously Maynard.
With Maynard, the customer always came last. Even those who helped him came unstuck.
I was very impressed by the video. It was beautiful with the lovely gardens. Reality was another thing altogether, I'm afraid, because when we arrived at our particular section of El Capistrano, the front door gave onto a building site. We were also very disappointed with the water supply because it took about a quarter of an hour just to fill the bottom of the bath with hot water, and after that it got very cold indeed, so we never had a bath. And it was pretty cold there too, so we lit a fire, and the fireplace fell in.
Pete Murray and Judith Chalmers were both paid in timeshare weeks for their help with advertisements like this. But whilst Judith Chalmers didn't want to discuss her involvement with Graham Maynard, Pete Murray did.
Well, knowing what I know now, and knowing the sort of things that Graham Maynard and El Capistrano have done to people, there is no way, had I known that at the time, that I would either have got involved with the commercial or the voiceover, and in no way would I have lent my photograph to any adverts that he might have used. No way.
Nevertheless, it was the Maynard school of slick salesmanship that persuaded so many to part with so much.
I had a rather serious road traffic accident, actually, and I had damages awarded to me, and I invested a large, substantial proportion of those damages into what I thought was going to be somewhere for me to enjoy and retire to eventually. So I invested my road traffic accident money in it.
But yet again, everything went wrong. And unfortunately for Beryl Gurney, as for many others, she'd never received her deeds. So when Maynard's creditors began to close in on him, their homes were at risk of being sold off to pay his mounting debts. Luckily, Beryl had a good lawyer.
And I began to wonder, in spite of all the shock that I'd had, what was going to happen to all the others who weren't aware of what was going on. They were in danger, in very real danger, of losing their property. And so was I.
It is really frightening to think of them finding themselves in a position in which they might, without even having the foggiest idea of it, losing their properties. Sold in public auction without even being told of that, because their deeds might not have been inscribed at the land registry yet on their own names.
This is Maynard on TV, posing as the respectable face of the timeshare industry.
We will have a very small percentage of complaints. Any industry does. Rolls-Royce Motors gets complaints. We're going to have them, as long as we face up to our responsibilities.
Responsibilities, however, are what Graham Maynard habitually avoids. At Walton Hall in Warwickshire, the receiver is now dealing with more than 3,000 complainants. The hall, bought from Danny LaRue with money made in Spain, was promoted as a rock-solid investment.
No matter how much holiday prices increase, our holidays are as safe as houses.
But as timeshare buyers voted on the receiver's rescue plan, it was plain that Graham Maynard had milked Walton Hall until it ran dry. Speaking with the benefit of hindsight, former commercial director Dennis Slipper.
Well, things were pretty bad. The sales team were being paid and their checks were bouncing. That was causing a lot of hard feeling throughout the whole establishment. And then, despite accountants' warnings that we were in serious financial problems, timeshare was still being sold right up to the Sunday prior to the receivership on the Monday.
So the company must have known that they probably couldn't deliver. They were selling people things that they couldn't deliver.
Oh, I think they were well aware of that. They were actually selling apartments that were unfinished.
This is the way.
9 are still unfinished.
Number 10. Would you give me £8,000 for an apartment in here?
No, thank you.
But 47 people did. They paid around £8,000 each for a share in apartment number 10. After all, there's an architect's certificate to say that it's completed and ready for occupation.
No glass in the windows.
And this is supposed to be finished?
That's right. People are supposed to be able to enjoy their timeshare holidays here. It's a pity the thing's not completed. It's a pity that the whole timeshare complex may fall apart. It's been a very frustrating receivership, trying to pull all the various strands together. It's known in the office by my staff as the mother of all receiverships, and in 15 years of doing receivership work, I've not come across one so complex or so frustrating.
Around £25 million worth of timeshare was sold at Walton Hall through what you say was potentially a very profitable company, yet there's still a £6 million shortfall. Why?
The main reason that I'm aware of is that the money has gone overseas to fund things such as 500-odd thousand that's gone to Pipstone Properties, an Isle of Man company in which I believe Graham Maynard has an interest. 2 other companies in Spain, La Posada and Torrox Beach Club, have received monies. The latter of those 2 companies has received monies to build 69 villas. Those villas are not at this present time completed, and I have to question as to whether the creditors of Walton Hall Limited will ever receive the benefit of those particular buildings.
In Britain and in Spain, Maynard continues to deceive. Anne Stamp had been invited out to sort out her problems on site.
Mr. Maynard, it's Anne Stamp from Sunderland, England. You asked me to come over.
But Maynard didn't want to speak to her.
So what was the point of sending the letter? It's just been a load of bull.
He didn't want to speak to David Best either. And he certainly didn't want to speak to us.
Mr. Maynard, could we have a word with you, please? Do you think you might come to the door and face us personally? We are clients of yours, after all. Frightened as well as deceitful, obviously.
This is Maynard's most plagued project. 500 houses, all built without planning permission, some on land claimed by the Forestry Department. John and Brenda Northern retired here and invested their life savings in a £45,000 villa. They weren't told the land was in dispute. The local authority now wants to fine Maynard more than £3 million for a number of planning infringements. Maynard can't or won't pay, so the Capistrano residents, including the Northerns and England football manager Graham Taylor, now face the prospect of having to find substantial sums to protect their homes. The Northerns are at their wits' end.
He's taken all our money under false pretences. This is what John said once to them down at the office. You have really sold this to us under false pretences, and we want our money back. Well, of course, there's no way they were going to do that. And so it's left us without any money, with a property we can't sell, and no choice whatsoever. We're stuck.
And our health
we're
not
trapped,
very good
and
either.
It affects our health too.
Every
Worry.
time anything crops up about this, it all seems to affect our health. You know, we're on tablets now for hypertension, both of us.
Do you think Mr. Maynard cares about this?
Not one iota.
It wouldn't affect him
No,
at all.
not
He
one
wouldn't-
bit.
No, it wouldn't affect him at all.
Mr. Maynard, my name's Roger Cook from Central Television. Thank you very much. I've come to talk to you about the El Capistrano. Why not? I've come to talk to you about the El Capistrano disaster.
I don't talk to the
Why don't
media.
you talk to the media? You've obviously got a hell of a lot to hide. No?
I'll put my dog on you.
Oh, leave the dog alone. It's a very nice dog. Leave the camera crew alone.
Do you want it as well?
Come on, don't be silly.
Get on your bikes. Hi, Joel.
Hiya.
You've left a lot of people in a great deal of trouble and taken a lot of money from a lot of people. You've built without planning permission.
Hiya.
There's no need to look smug. And obviously, you've still done extremely well. I admire the watch.
Good. Where are the millions from Walton Hall?
Go.
David Best and Anne Stamp go home empty-handed. Maynard has sold Anne's house and kept her $25,000. David Best's villa still isn't finished, and Maynard is refusing to refund his $22,000. Many more people in a similar position. Nearly half of the 1,600 people who bought Capistrano villas will need even deeper pockets in order to safeguard them.
Come out and explain yourself, Mr. Maynard.
You want to come round me? You're going to get it.
Gonna get what?
What do you want?
Your money or not? Come on. Explain yourself. Explain yourself. You've got hundreds and hundreds of dissatisfied customers. People you've taken life savings from. You may still be happy, but there are plenty of people... There are plenty of... That's very subtle of you.
Brenda Northern appeals to the mayor for help.
This is our only home. We have no other home.
And her bank account is almost empty. No one knows how much is in Maynard's, but as much as £50 million has passed through his hands via England, Spain, and the Isle of Man. To his victims, Maynard says, in summary, Capistrano is bust, you'll get nothing from me, appoint a lawyer to sort out the mess.
That's very kind of you.
You're very welcome. Now wait a minute.
Is this what you tell, in fact, this is what you tell the customers who are owed a lot of money, don't you? Pardon?
Well, personally, I'd like to see him locked up and the key thrown away.
When does everybody get their title deeds and their money? Where is he now? He's hiding in a corner as well he might.
He tells lies. He's completely untrustworthy. And the man should be stopped and brought to book.
With that in mind, we're passing our files to the Fraud Squad.